one of the things about Vedanta, you know, I've studied and practiced Zen, the Zen approach, and you know, I've talked about that here. It emphasizes Zazen, it emphasizes meditation as the primary path, right, to waking up. But I have also said here that that's one wing of the bird. If you don't have the teaching, right, that the practice really won't have the potential and the power it will have if you understand what it's about, which is the teaching. Now, in Advaita Vedanta, in Vedanta, they emphasize knowledge. They emphasize knowledge more than practice. The condition that we find ourselves in is a function of ignorance, right? Function of ignorance. We don't know any better. You know, you're conditioned and you were taught that you were this, that, and the other. You were a personality, your physical body, et cetera, right? And so it's ignorance. You just don't know any better. You don't have the knowledge. And so one of the ways they talk about this in the Vedanta teachings is to remove the ignorance allows you to see the truth. That makes sense, right? To remove the ignorance allows you to see the truth. And so the emphasis in Vedanta is knowledge to remove the ignorance and replace it with the truth, replace it with knowledge, okay? And then practicing what you've learned to be true. And one of the things that he says that caught my attention, I think this is really a powerful trick or a powerful way to get an edge with these practices, right? In the beginning, when you come to this, you're in the world of a person and a personality. You know, you're in the world of the reality that everybody agrees is the reality, right? And so you learn about this, and then after you learn about this and you start practicing meditation, you want to start to transition away from this identity as a personality and be who you really are, be the awareness. Right? The problem with that is that you're transitioning from a place that doesn't exist. That's like saying, I want to get from here to downtown Media, right? But I think I am in Philadelphia. I think I'm in Philadelphia and I want to get to downtown Media. Can you see the problem? Sure. And so I think I'm in Philadelphia, but I'm here. So if I think I'm in Philadelphia and I go from here the way I would go from Philadelphia to get where I want to go, I'm not going to get what I want to go. That's the same situation. To try and go from an illusion to reality doesn't work because illusion isn't real. It doesn't exist. It's not a place. It's not a real place to leave from to get anywhere. Okay. Rather than that, as you learn about your true nature, right, so that you can have a sense of it, you know, that it's not in time, that it has no form, it has no shape, right, doesn't need anything, doesn't want anything, isn't going anywhere, is always here, is always still, never moves, you know, all of that, and hopefully all of those realities are realities that you can see directly for yourself. Right? That's when it's powerful, when you see it for yourself, not when you hear me say it or somebody else say it and believe it, then it's just the same as the rest of the beliefs that you may have. No, but you can see this for yourself because this is real. It does exist. It's actual. It's actual, right? So what he says is, instead of practicing and trying to get from being a person to being the awareness, right? Learn enough about the awareness that you have a good feeling and a good sense of it, and that continues to increase through the practice of formal meditation, right? And then practice not being the person. Instead of practice being the awareness, practice not being the person. Because the awareness is a real reality. You can be in that reality and pay attention in such a way where you watch how the personality continues to play. Through the thinking, through the feelings, right? You know, through the stories, through the drama, you know, all of that. See how the personality is playing. And if you see it from the truth of awareness, right, then you have a real place you're looking from. And as you see it, so now you have something that can give you a real feet on the ground way to practice, right? Because what does practice look like if you take on practice that way? What practice looks like is now you're going through the day and you know what's going to run as you go through the day as being a separate self, being a personality, right? Reacting as that, right? Having thoughts as that, right? Living in a world that is a projection from that, from your conditioning, right? So now what you have to practice is you practice noticing and paying attention to your involvement with what's not real. That's a practice. That's a practice. You know, until you find out that a mirage is a mirage, there's no way for you to avoid a mirage, is there? You'll think there's water. You'll think there's water. But when you find out it's a mirage, you may see water in the distance, but now you've learned. And so you won't have to go all the way to the mirage to find out there's nothing there. The same thing is true here. Your personality is a mirage. Your personality is an illusion, right? So when you know, I love this logic that some of my teachers have talked about in regard to this. You know, an illusion is not an illusion unless it's not an illusion. It's really worth your while to see that, right? An illusion is not an illusion unless it's not an illusion, right? Why? Because if you think it's real, right, but it's not real, that's an illusion. But you'd have to think it's real for it to be an illusion. So it's not an illusion. You see what I'm saying? It's a tricky thing that goes on in the mind, right? So those kinds of things are interesting things to play with and look at because they reveal something about how things work. You know, suppose you're really upset. Suppose you're really caught up in a reaction and it's really intense, you know, and you really lose contact with the truth, right? Is there anything you can do? That's basically what you're saying. Is there anything you can do? And my answer to you was no, there's nothing you can do. And the reason that I gave for that answer is because as a non-dual response, right, I'm saying to you that there is no doer. In non-duality, there is no doer. That's considered to be the truth, right? There is no doer. So if you're asking me, is there anything you could do? The truth is no, there is nothing you could do. However, that could leave people hung up like, okay, there's nothing I can do. Now what? Now what? I'm upset, right? I'm upset, and your question was a realistic question, because when we're in the middle of an upset, we do want to be able to come up with something other than being crazy, right? Yeah. So what happens is this, and this is the part that I didn't say, right? There's nothing you can do, but then I said after that, however, there is a way that you can be, right? And it's about being rather than doing, right? And when you're being present to what's happening, when you're being present to the upset, when you're being present to the thoughts, the feelings, the physical sensations, and so forth, as the awareness, and if you're being present as the awareness, you're not involved. You're the witness. You're not involved. You're watching. This is very important for you to check in about. If you're involved, that's different. Now you're in the personality, right? Now, in order for there to be a difference that makes a difference, you've got to be able to look, and this comes with practice, this comes through formal meditation, you've got to be able to start to recognize as the awareness I am witnessing, I am viewing the thinking and the feelings and the physical sensations of the personality. And I'm viewing the pattern of the personality that's playing right now. I'm viewing that, okay? And as I have said here many, many times, when that's the case, the light of that awareness has an impact on what's happening. And so change is a constant. Change is always occurring, right? But the change that will occur when the light of awareness is shining on what's happening, it changes the way it's changing. So without that awareness, without the light of awareness, you got upset. After you got upset, you might have felt guilty about getting upset. You might have a little sadness about it. Then you want to forget about the whole thing and have a beer. That's kind of the way things play out, right? No, but with this, you're awake, you're aware, you're watching it, right? And as you're watching it and you're not experiencing being it, you're not identified with the thoughts and the emotions, right? You're watching it. And what you see as you're watching it is that it starts to dissipate before your eyes. It starts to dissipate before your eyes. See, so what's happening is that the power of the awareness in terms of the effect that it has on what's happening has what happens next be different from what would have happened. So what I meant to say, what I should have said further is that, oh no, you will act. You will act, right? But where that action comes from will be different if you've paid attention from the awareness, right? So that completes the answer, because now I'm saying, in answer to what can you do? You can be yourself. And when you're being yourself, you will do, right? But what you will do will be different from what you would have done had you been just the personality again. So instead of replaying the neural pattern, right, because you're awake and aware, right, you have possibilities available. And because the possibilities are available, possibility may start playing over here, and you see that possibility, and now you get interested in that possibility, and that ends up being your behavior. You see what I'm saying? So I want to be clear with you that this practice does make a difference. You will be able to behave differently. You will be able to wake up in the middle of upsets and start acting sane again. You know, that will happen. So I didn't want to leave people with the idea that it was just, there's nothing you can do. Yeah, it's not that there's anything you can do, but when you're being who you are, what happens from that, the actions that occur from that, aren't the personality doing anything. You see what I'm saying? It's not the personality doing anything. No, the behavior is now coming from the source, like that. And you know, this is why when you see awakened masters, when you see people who are awake, right, consistently awake, right, their behavior is a consistent expression of that, regardless of what's going on in their head. There may be crazy shit going on in their mind, right? But they're not identifying with that. They're not identifying with that. They're identifying with the truth. And that then is the practice, you see? That's the practice. If the way you're practicing is, I know enough about who I am to notice that, to be aware of that, and then bring that to the situation, you know, and then have that be what's different about the situation. And then things can be different. Because what goes on in the mind is the same way as listening to the radio, you know. You don't get to choose what songs are playing. You don't get to choose what thoughts are happening. You don't get to choose whether it's a country and western song or a rock and roll song. You don't get to choose how you feel either, right? This is very important. But a lot of the time what will happen, and that's why repetition is so important with these things, you know. I mean, there's so many things I can remember in my own process that I had read or heard or a teacher said. I had no idea what they're talking about. But I didn't let it go. I didn't just write it off, right? I kept coming back and looking at it, you know, and then one day it popped. One day I saw exactly what that was about, right? And that's the way you have to work with these things, right? So if you hear me say something and it makes no sense to you, number one, don't get upset about it. Don't worry about it. Don't let your personality get all reactivated and think you're stupid and all the rest of the stuff your personality beat you up with. Don't let that happen, right? But just make a note of it. Just make a note of it. Maybe even write it down. And this is something that was said, it didn't make any sense to me, and I want to contemplate it. I want to reflect on it, you know? And at some point, if you do that, at some point it'll pop. You know, at some point you'll see what that is all about. And that's a process that's ongoing. There's no end to that process. There's no end to this process. There's no end to what there is to understand. There is no end to what there is to know. It's literally endless, you know. And so to understand that means that you don't have to be in a hurry because you're not going anywhere. You know, it's all different ways of experiencing and appreciating this, right? And this isn't going anywhere. This is always here, right? But the dynamics of this and the endlessness of this, the eternal aspect of it, the divine aspect of it is eternal and divine. So there's never an end to all the interesting things there are to become aware of. There's just no, and one of the reasons that there's no end to it is because it's constantly in flux. It's constantly changing. It's not something that stays the same so you can learn it and then it's over. No. Life is an ever-changing matrix, right? So you can, you know, the only thing that you can know for certain is that nothing is for certain. That's the only thing you can know for certain. But that's not a bad thing, because that means there's an endless array of creativity. There's an endless array of things happening and shifting and changing all the time, right? So you can be excited about your relationship to that, to life, to the energy of life and the way life is expressing itself. If you understand, I mean, you guys have been with me for a while now, so if you understand the bottom line here, the bottom line here is all you have to do is wake up. Period. That's it. If you wake up, being awake and being who you are will resolve it all, will resolve everything. How does that work? Well, the way it works is, as you are awake in your life, right? When you're awake in your life, you're there for your life. You're seeing what's happening. You're witnessing dysfunction. You're witnessing unworkability if you're there for your life, right? So just because you're there for your life, you're not trying to change anything. You're not trying to make anything different. You're just being there. But don't underestimate your presence. Your presence is the light of awareness that reveals the way it is, that reveals the truth. So when that light of awareness shines on what's happening, it sees what's dysfunctional. It sees what doesn't work. It sees what's not real. And you don't have to do anything about it. Just continue to be the witness. Continue to see what's not real. Why? Because as I tried to explain earlier, just out of that, right, what will happen is the way your life changes. It's transformational. What happens is that as you live your life, in the process of life itself, you know, back in the old days, in the S training, I never forgot the purpose of the S training. When the first day of the S training, they had the purpose of the S training on the blackboard. And they really spent a lot of time on that purpose because they wanted the people to understand what they were going to do, or how they were going to experience what was going to happen next, right? And the purpose of the S training was that it's a transformational process in which the problems that you have been struggling with and dealing with and coping with and trying to change clear up in the process of life itself. Check that out. The problems you've been coping with, struggling with, trying to change, working on, right, clear up in the process of life itself. In other words, all you have to do is be awake and live your life, and because you're awake, you'll see what doesn't work, and because you see what doesn't work, you'll naturally start doing something other than that in the process of life itself. So you could say you're doing nothing, you see? You could say you're doing nothing. All you're doing is being with what's there, being with your life. And because you're being with your life, and don't forget, that awareness that's being with your life is intelligent. That awareness that you are that's being with your life has wisdom. It has clarity. It has peace. It has satisfaction, right? So there you are as that awareness, experiencing what I just described, watching your life, and when what's happening there is inconsistent with this, out of line with this, it's a natural adjustment. You don't even have to try and do anything. It goes back to that thing I used to say here about when the person asked the dentist, you know, when I tap my tooth, it hurts. What do you think I should do? And the dentist said, don't tap the tooth. That's a natural learning process, you know what I mean? Don't do what hurts you. Don't do what doesn't work. And you don't have to make it a project. It doesn't have to be self-improvement, right? If it's a personality thing, it's going to be self-improvement. It's going to be more, different, or better. You're going to work at changing the way you are, you know what I mean? But that work of changing the way you are doesn't work because the more it changes, the more it stays the same. What do I mean by that? You can keep changing the way you express yourself, your behaviors and all that other jazz, right? But they're still all coming from the personality. And so the more they change, the more they stay the same. They're expressing the personality. They can only express the personality because the resource from which your behavior comes is your conditioning. So when you're awake, where your behavior is coming from awareness. It's coming from a transformational process. Yeah, in which just the fact that you're there for your life and you're seeing what's happening not like an interpretation of it, not like the way you feel about it. No, that you're actually seeing what's happening. If you're in a fight with somebody that you live with, that you love, that you're close to, it's very important for you to notice that, right? To notice, I am fighting with somebody I love. I am fighting with somebody that loves me. And in the midst of this anger and in the midst of these thoughts, they appear to me to be a threat. So as much as I love them, I'll curse them, right? I'll curse them. I'll leave them, right? Because of how I feel, of the thoughts that I'm having, right? So when you're awake, there you are, you can see, this is somebody I love, this is somebody I trust, this is somebody that loves me. So what's happening here? Something has taken over that's running me, that's running my behavior, that's making me say these things. You know what I'm talking about. Because when this all comes down later, right, and you reflect back on it, you know you were crazy. You know you were crazy. Even in terms of the little ways that this shows up, you know. I have to laugh at myself, because if you start paying attention and you start paying attention to the little idiosyncratic ways that you bitch and complain about things, you know, like something as little as you push a door to shut it and you walk away, but it doesn't shut. And you look back and you say, God damn it. Right? That's an example of what I'm talking about. The little ways that you relate to your life with annoyance. You know what I mean? Life is annoying because it's not doing what I want. It didn't do what I wanted. Right? That's ridiculous.
And that's all conditioning?
It's all conditioning. Your expectations are conditioning. You expect, look, why would you be upset if the door didn't close? Because it's supposed to close, right? That's stupid. Doors aren't supposed to do anything, right? They do whatever they do. You're the actor that causes it to close or not to close. So if you want to bitch and complain, look in the mirror and holler at yourself, right? That's how crazy this is. And once you're awake and you start seeing these things as you go through your day, you'll start to laugh. You'll start to laugh. Not that you can control whether it runs, right? Like you driving your car is a good example, right? If you think because you learned something here and that'll change the way you are in your car, you're wrong. No, when you're in your car, it'll be the same way as it always was. Somebody cuts you off and you give them the bird. Somebody cuts you off, you curse them out. Somebody cuts you off and you get pissed off, right? Don't forget, you have nothing to say about any of that. It may change, but not because you're trying to change it. You have nothing to say about any of that. And if it happens, and when it happens, you laugh, you're well on your way to it ending. You see what I'm saying? Because now you're seeing it, you're not being it, right? And that's the beginning of the end, when you see it instead of be it.